I went to a comedy club with my best friend Diane, who planned to stay over at my apartment afterward. Since the parking lot behind my building was full, I parked about a block away on a curved street. My car was the fourth vehicle after the sharp bend. As I exited the car and leaned into the back seat, a loud noise made me look up. I saw a red F-150 truck speeding toward the curve at a staggering 98 miles per hour in a 25 miles per hour zone. I braced myself, thinking it would crash into the first parked car, a 280ZX. Instead, the truck launched off the sloped back of that car, going airborne. In an instant, I saw its undercarriage before it struck me. I was thrown violently backward, my head slamming into the roof of my parked car, and my waist bent unnaturally over its edge. The truck crushed the rear quarter panel of my car, and I felt it beginning to break my ribs as it folded me in half. At that moment, I thought my life was over. What I didn't realize was that the truck simultaneously struck my car's heavy door, a 1987 Trans Am, with long, solid doors. The impact swung the door out, absorbing some of the force that might have crushed me completely. The door was left mangled into a J shape but stayed attached. The truck landed 2 blocks away upside down, leaving all involved vehicles totaled. After the impact, I slipped off the car and felt myself falling. Suddenly, I was standing on the quiet street, bathed in a serene, beautiful blue light. The night felt calm and peaceful as I took 4 steps forward. Ahead of me, near the entrance of a tunnel, I saw my former skating coach, who had died of cancer, and a woman I instinctively knew to be my maternal grandmother. Though I had never met her, I recognized her. She had died shortly after learning of my birth. Hearing my name, I turned, momentarily annoyed at being pulled from the beauty of the moment. That's when I saw my own body lying on the ground. Confused, I wondered, how can I be here and there at the same time? As I walked back toward my body, I encountered vibrant ribbons of colored light waving knee-high. When these ribbons passed through me, they filled me with overwhelming love, peace, and joy. Kneeling beside my body, I examined it closely. It appeared intact, despite my memory of the truck crushing me. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to stay in the light forever, while another part thought of the pain my death would bring to my parents. I realized staying would mean never growing up, marrying, or having the children I longed for. It felt as though God was behind me, watching over my shoulder. Telepathically, I asked God to decide. The answer came clearly: go back. In an instant, I opened my eyes. Pain consumed me. Intense, unbearable pain that made me cry out, begging God to take me back. But there was only silence, cold, and darkness. I noticed blood dripping from my left ear, but hadn't realized how severe my injuries were. My vision was tunneled, and fear gripped me. The ambulance ride felt endless. I struggled to stay connected to my body, clinging to silver ribbons of light that seemed to extend from the paramedic's touch. His constant physical contact anchored me, keeping me from floating away. I later learned he had noticed my head trauma and taken me to a hospital that could provide better care, though a mix-up led to my being misclassified as uninsured and released prematurely. At home, I spoke in fragmented, childlike sentences, stuck in a toddler-like state despite being a CEO of a medium-sized company. The next morning, I felt compelled to revisit the accident scene. I insisted my mother drive me there, threatening to take her car if she refused. Reluctantly, she agreed. When we arrived, I was startled to see a man standing in the exact spot where I had lain the night before. Fearing he might be stealing something from my wrecked car, I approached cautiously. As I got closer, I realized it was the paramedic who had helped me. He told me he had never revisited an accident site in his 10 years on the job, but felt drawn back because of something extraordinary. He described seeing a radiant blue light shining down on the scene as the ambulance arrived, with no apparent source. Entering the light, he said, felt like stepping into the manifest presence of God. Though he wanted to stay and bask in it, his duty to save me took precedence. He admitted returning after his shift, hoping to experience it again, but sadly the light was gone. When he asked if I had been with God, I replied simply, yes, though the weight of the question hit me later. He expressed guilt for the hospital mishap, explaining that his decision to classify me as a trauma case led to my mismanagement. The hospital had assumed I was uninsured and discharged me too soon despite the severity of my condition. The paramedics' care and decision to bring me to that specific hospital likely saved my life. That morning, I came to terms with the profound experience I had. The love, light, and presence I encountered left me forever changed. I now view life through the lens of eternity, cherishing what truly matters and understanding how thin the line is between this world and the next. This story was shared by Shireen E. and happened in 1988. Story 2. I spent years battling multiple autoimmune disorders and enduring surgeries for my chronic illnesses. Within 13 months, I underwent 2 heart surgeries and spinal fusion for a fractured spine, sustained after falling while losing balance and vision due to a brain tumor. This tumor, diagnosed the same day as my heart condition, demanded urgent surgery. While recovering from spinal fusion, I developed a post-surgical infection and began leaking cerebral fluid through my nose. Doctors insisted on immediate brain surgery despite my fragile state. My suffering led me to establish a firm, do not resuscitate, DNR order. I made my husband, Jason, practice saying, "No, I do not want my wife resuscitated." However, on the way to the emergency room, I panicked. "Call Jason, I need to hear his voice, I'm dying," I yelled, desperate to say goodbye to my son. At the hospital, my condition worsened rapidly. I was dry heaving, too weak to sit up. Blood tests revealed severe hyponatremia, and a phlebotomist we knew, Shirley, paled when she saw my sample. "It looks like water, not blood," a dire sign. As my body deteriorated, I felt my cells popping, like soap bubbles bursting. I realized I had only 2 or 3 breaths left. Though I had always claimed not to fear death, I was consumed by terror and shame at my impending end. Breathing became nearly impossible and panic overtook me. In the peak of my fear, I felt a hand gently rest on my right shoulder and pull me backward into an embrace. Suddenly, all fear vanished. I was enveloped in a sea of radiant, living light, filled with a nurturing presence I immediately recognized as Jesus. There was no tunnel or journey, just instant peace and overwhelming love. This universal womb of love was unlike anything on earth, and I intuitively received knowledge. I was told I would return because I still had work to do. Instantly, I was back in the hospital. Hovering above my body, I saw my husband slumped in a chair. A nurse loudly asked him, "Mr. Winter, do you want us to enforce the DNR?" Though I had made him promise to let me go, I whispered in his ear, "Say yes." He lifted his head and said, "Yes, do everything you can." I then blacked out. I woke days later, shocked to learn I'd spent 6 days in the hospital. My husband told me I had rambled incessantly as if in conversation with God. After this near-death experience, NDE, I began receiving intuitive knowledge with uncanny certainty. I realized this was an extension of the communication I'd experienced outside my body. I can say with absolute certainty, when we die, our consciousness continues without pause. Following my NDE, I also had extraordinary experiences, including messages from transitioned souls, often delivering comfort to their grieving loved ones. One such encounter occurred with a stranger at a mall. Additionally, I developed an insatiable interest in mathematics, physics, and ancient spiritual texts like the Vedas and Upanishads. I understood these complex ideas intuitively, as if part of a living, interconnected field, the Akashic field, Higgs field, or unified field. I also experienced profound connections with animals, demonstrating sentience far beyond human expectations. As I deepened my meditation practice, I recognized that the place I visited during my NDE was the same space accessed through transcendental meditation. This realization made meditation an essential part of my physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, and preparation for the journey that begins with death. There is more to share, including another NDE, but this first experience profoundly transformed me. I now live with no fear of death, only a serene certainty about the bliss awaiting us beyond this life. Recently, I needed high-risk aortic surgery, requiring blood on standby in case of complications. When I refused a transfusion, the surgical team was alarmed, warning that my life could hang by a thread. I simply smiled, reassuring them of my trust in their skills and my lack of fear. I know with unwavering confidence that when my time comes, I'll transition into the boundless love and light I was privileged to experience. This story was shared by Leah W. and happened in 2013.